Hello, and welcome to the third week of In Case You Missed It, where I briefly go over the most popular releases of last week in movies and TV. I'm your host, the Stud Muffin Tom Cruise, and let's get started right away with movies. On November 1st, Terminator Dark Fate was released in theaters in the United States. Directed by Timothy Miller, it features a cast of Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, Arnold Schwarzenegger as T-800/Carl, Mackenzie Davis as Grace, and Natalia Reyes as Danny Ramos. Like the other Terminator movies, the plot focuses on protecting someone from a scary Terminator from the future. In this case, Sarah Connor and a T-800 that has taken the name Carl are begrudgingly working together alongside Grace, a super soldier from the future, to protect Danny Ramos from a Rev-9, a scary new Terminator from the future. So far, Terminator Dark Fate has grossed a worldwide total of $123.6 million, debuting to $29 million and finishing number one in the box office this weekend. The movie has a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the critic consensus saying it is an upgrade over its immediate predecessors, though it isn't as great as the franchise's best installments. For me, the Terminator movies have almost become their own genre. Whether it's better or worse than previous installments is irrelevant, so long as it adapts the Terminator formula well, which it does. Fans of previous Terminator movies will love it, and if you're new to the franchise, give it a watch, because the action and thrilling nature of two killing machines duking it out on the protagonist and antagonist side has always been a formula for success. Go watch it. It's good. Moving on, also released on November 1st was Harriet, directed by Casey Lemons. The cast features Cynthia Erivo as Harriet Tubman, Leslie Odom Jr. as William Still, Joe Alwyn as Gideon Brodus, and Clark Peters as Ben Ross. The film is a biographical story about Harriet Tubman, an abolitionist and former slave who led hundreds of people to freedom in the Underground Railroad. So far, the film has grossed a domestic total of $12 million and has not been released to international audiences. As such, it also debuted to $12 million, finishing fourth on the box office this weekend under Terminator, Joker, and Maleficent. Harriet received a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics saying it is a sincere tribute to a pivotal figure in American history, but is frustratingly formulaic in its approach to the story. Well, I say the formula exists for a reason, critics. Sure, the movie isn't innovative, but it tells the story it sets out to tell, and the acting performances and cinematography will keep you engaged until the end. Moving on to television, I have some exciting news. Last week, on November 1st, Apple launched their new on-demand streaming service, Apple TV+. And with that launch comes a lot of new shows. So this week's selection of TV shows will have some of the shows I'm looking forward to watching the most on Apple TV+. So, keeping with the theme of American historical figures, let's jump right into Apple TV's new show, Dickinson. Released alongside the launch of the platform on November 1st, Dickinson is about the great American historical writer and poet, Emily Dickinson. The show is a coming-of-age tale that explores gender inequality, society, and family in one woman's quest to become a great writer. And if you think you recognize the actress that plays Emily, it's because you probably do. The show stars Haley Steinfeld as Emily, who I personally recognize as Petra from Ender's Game, but is also well known for her role as Charlie in the movie Bumblebee. The cast also features Adrian Ensko as Austin Dickinson, Anna Baryshnikov as Lavinia Dickinson, and Jane Krakowski as Mrs. Dickinson. The show has a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics saying it is audacious, but its bold blend of period drama and millennial milieu may not be for everyone. And if you're like me and need a translation for what millennial milieu means, it basically means that the show is modernized somewhat to appeal more to millennials despite being set in the 1800s, which I personally think is a good thing, but to each their own. Moving on to the next show, released alongside the launch of Apple TV Plus on November 1st, is the new show, For All Mankind. The show is an alternate what-if scenario exploring what would have happened if the space race never ended and the Soviets were the first to land on the moon, not the United States. The main cast features Jodie Balfour as Ellen Waverly, Michael Dorman as Gordo Stevens, Ren Schmidt as Margot Madison, and Sonia Walger as Molly Cobb. The show has a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics saying that it has an impressive vision for alternate history and has a lot of potential. I personally am a little bit of a space nerd, so I'm seriously considering getting Apple TV Plus just for this show. If you're like me and you like space, I bet we're going to love this show. So we've got one more show to cover before the end of tonight's episode of In Case You Missed It, but there are a lot of other shows that came out on Apple TV Plus this week, and I unfortunately do not have time to cover them all. So I'm going to do a quick lightning round of shows that you should check out on your own. The Morning Show, featuring Jennifer Aniston exploring the cutthroat world of morning news. See, featuring Jason Momoa about a future where mankind has lost the ability to see and must communicate in different ways, which is all good and fine until a set of twins is born with sight, challenging the status quo. And Truth Be Told, a criminal investigative series featuring Octavia Spencer that explores the philosophy of justice. There are plenty more shows on Apple TV, so be sure to go check them out for yourself. Moving on to our last show of the day, also released on November 1st, was Amazon Prime Video's Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan Season 2, and boy is that a mouthful. The show is a political thriller based on characters from Tom Clancy's Ryanverse. The show follows Jack Ryan, a CIA analyst who leaves the safety of his desk to go out into the field after discovering a series of dubious bank transfers. By Season 2, Jack Ryan is caught up in political warfare in a fictionalized Venezuela suffering an economic meltdown, much to the dislike of Venezuela's real-life government. So if you watch the show, remember that it is fiction and does not reflect real-life Venezuela. It probably doesn't need to be said, but in case you've been living under a rock since 2005, the main character, Jack Ryan, is played by John Krasinski, who should be universally recognized as Jim from The Office. The show also features Wendell Pierce as James Greer, John Hugenacker as Mattis, and Abby Cornish as Kathy Mueller. The show has an overall score of 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, with critics praising Krasinski's performance as Jack Ryan, saying that he plays the character very naturally and makes him more relatable. If you're a fan of political thrillers with a good dose of action, this show will be right down your alley. That'll do it for this week's installment of In Case You Missed It. Be sure to tune in next week for this week's most popular releases in movies and TV. I'm your host, the Stud Muffin Tom Cruise, and keep it locked to good night.